You give me the sweetest taboo. That's why I'm still in love with you. So, we're telling a story tonight. I had to decide if I was going to tell this story so soon. Thank you guys for rejoining me. I took a little break for the holidays. Didn't want to be in a negative space. Just wasn't in a creative space. I had to focus. So, the story tonight, it's so young, so restless, full of drama. It's very different. It's sad. It's so sad that it's almost funny. The more you cry, the less you pee. So there's always a silver lining. So, I want to say this starts way back in 2015, 2016. My father was aging. He was getting older. He was already old, but I was starting to notice that things were catching up to him. And that time that things were catching up to him, his driving became really poor. His reaction time wasn't there. Almost every other day, he was getting into some type of car accident, some type of hit and run. Somebody hit him and pulled off. There was just a lot of dramatics when he was out alone. So, one day I get a phone call from Delaware County Memorial Hospital, which is now closed, letting me know he had been in an accident and was being seen at the hospital. That he wanted them to call me and let me know he would be home after he was seen. So after that incident, I want to say that was mid 2015. A few months go by, and my dad is an Air Force veteran. The VA Medical Center gives us a call and states that he was in an accident, that they received x-rays from Delaware County Memorial Hospital. The emergency room doctor was very concerned about what they had found on these x-rays, and they'd like us to come down to the hospital, both of us. They explained they found a mass in his lung, that it needed to be biopsied, and it is their belief that he has cancer. They do the biopsy. We sit with the nurse practitioner. They explain everything to us. About a week goes by. He's laying in the bed. We get a phone call stating that he's got stage 4 cancer. When they had reached out to us, they let us know that it was a strong possibility that it was stage 3B, most likely stage 4. When he got that phone call, he kind of just shrugged his shoulders, turned over and went back to sleep. I'm over there in the corner shitting bricks like, my dad has stage 4 cancer and he's laying over here like, who gives a fuck? Which makes sense because he had lived a long, hard life, but that's still my dad, regardless of what he put me through. I knew he was old. I knew he was going to die. You just don't expect to hear stage 4 cancer. In that time, I reached out to everyone, let everyone know. To be honest, they could give a damn. They said what needed to be said. They didn't care he was sick. They weren't going to participate. We go to the first doctor's appointment at the VA, 8th floor, with the oncology doctor from University of Penn. I forget his name. Wonderful guy. I was 18 or 19 when he was diagnosed, and for some reason in that appointment, they were kind of making things about me in the sense of what I was going to do. And what I was going to do is what my father wanted to do. Although all I was stuck on the fact is that my dad wasn't going to be here much longer, I had seen other people, movies, read books. Through all the abuse and neglect, I had a firm understanding I wasn't going to hold on to my dad in any selfish way that would have caused him harm. So the doctor says he's got stage 4 cancer. At his age, it's typically life extending. It buys more time to enjoy life, to say goodbye. I said to my dad, this is your choice. I looked right at him. Do you want to fight or go in peace? In the sense of just making a decision to not do anything about the cancer and let nature take its course. He looked at me and said, if I fight, are you going to fight? I said, hell yeah, I'll do whatever you want. He said, I'm going to fight. The doctor says surgery is not an option at your age. Radiation is not an option. We can put you on chemo. So he did chemo for 6 months, 3 times a month, double bags at 80 years old. The white bag and the clear bag. Before we left that appointment, I asked the doctor if he chooses not to do chemo, how long does he have to live? The doctor says, to be honest, 6 months or less. He did that chemo. I moved him to the city to be close to the VA so the van could pick him up. He was going to the hospital on his own. I don't want to say majority of the time, but about half the time. All of the responsibility of myself and him were on me. So him having that bit of independence to go to the hospital was something he enjoyed. He had his cane, the van would pick him up. I didn't have to worry about him where he was at. If he had an issue, if he fell, if he had to be admitted to the hospital, they would give me a call. He could see his buddies, he could hang out and have a good meal. It was really something he enjoyed, especially while being sick. There was one time the van is bringing him home. He let his phone die. I was upstairs asleep and the van's honking the horn. So I run downstairs to open the door. And the van driver's face is just turned the fuck upside down. Like he's just me mugging, like he's just upset. And I'm like, what's going on? So my dad grabs the banister and he says, I gotta use the bathroom. I said, come on, I'm gonna help you. Come on, you gotta use the bathroom. He goes, well, and the guy's just standing there holding his arm. I'm like, sir, you can go. What's wrong? Next thing you know, he says, I done. And next thing you know, he done shit on himself. Right on the steps. All down his leg. Right in the man's face. The man don't know what the fuck to do. And I'm standing there. Well, don't stand there and just shit all over yourself. Come up the fucking steps so we can get in the house. All this shit is running down his fucking legs. And all over his fucking socks. He was so fucking embarrassed. I'm just like, can you, man, don't fucking stand there and come up the fucking steps. I wish he would have took all that shit off right outside. It was so fucking nasty. I think he shit on himself coming back from chemo 2 or 3 more times. I'm going to be honest with you. It was just something that happened. It was a side effect. It was something that happened at his age. When I say I was his caregiver, I was his power of attorney. I took care of all of his affairs. Anything that he needed, that's what I was there to do. I didn't get paid for taking care of my dad. By the time that was set up, he was on to his 2nd stroke. No income for me being his caregiver during that time, which is a fairly big mistake, but when you're overwhelmed and you're spread thin, things fall to the wayside. Unfortunately, the cancer caught up to him. About a year and a half after his diagnosis, my roommate knocked on the door and said, Malik, there's something wrong with your dad. He can't remember where the restroom is. We lived in a Philly row home, so the restroom was 2 doors down in the middle of the house. I got up and I said, Dad, what do you mean you can't remember where the restroom is? He's looking down the hallway at the restroom and he says, I can't remember. I walked him down the hallway And he got into the restroom. The first thing he did, as soon as he got into the restroom, he grabbed the wall. He fell straight forward and planked into the toilet and hit his forehead. He didn't scream. He didn't say ouch. It wasn't about blood. He made no noise. I picked up on this. My cousin, my roommate are standing there. They're just looking at him. I grab him up underneath of his arms and pull him and sit him up straight on the floor against the banister. I said, Dad, are you all right? You just fell and hit your head on the edge of the toilet seat. He was just sitting there kicking his legs like an infant. He didn't go ouch, didn't go nothing. I thought he was in diabetic shock because he was a diabetic. So I called 911. 911 arrived. They gave him 3 pens of glucose. They said, sir, your father should be bouncing off the walls. He's not having a diabetic episode. We have to get him to the hospital. They rush him to the hospital. I get dressed. I get in my car. I follow to the hospital. They've got him in the ICU unit. I get in there and they've got all the tubes hooked up to him. He looked like a shooting victim in the trauma bay. He had a major stroke. That killed the center of his brain. The center of your brain is what controls your language, your mouth, and your motor skills. They flooded his brain with blood and kept his blood pressure up until I got to the hospital. We were able to have one last conversation. I said, are you all right? Did you hit your head on the toilet? You didn't scream? He said, shit, yeah, I'm okay. He said, I'm fucking cold and I'm fucking hungry. After they lowered his blood pressure, that part of his brain unfortunately died and went entirely gray on the brain scan. So, although he was still alive, he was no longer capable on his own behalf of speaking, swallowing, chewing, picking up his mouth. He couldn't do it. They showed me that there was never going to be blood flow back to that part of his brain that although he was still there, that I was not going to be able to hear his voice ever again. So they move him to a different ICU to start rehabilitation. This is why I want to say that, not that you shouldn't trust doctors, but that you have to do your own diligence. You have to advocate. When you're put into a position where you're caring for someone or even for yourself and you just don't feel like it's right, you don't have to argue, but advocate. As soon as I got upstairs, the first thing they said to me is, well, is there someone else that we can speak to? Is there someone older than we can speak to? I said, no, it's me. I'm his power of attorney. I'm his son. I may look young. I promise you, my paperwork is in order. My affairs are in order. I'm here in the best interest of my father. They don't play games. They don't waste any time. The first thing they say is at his age and that he has stage 4 cancer. Now that he's had these strokes, chemotherapy is no longer viable. You should send him straight into hospice. This is still a 200-pound man, stable for 2 years on chemo. He had not lost weight. He hadn't lost his wits. Beyond not being able to speak, he could open his eyes. He knew when I was in the room, could hear me. He could lift his legs. He could squeeze my hand tightly. My father was still there. I said to them, so what does hospice entail? Well, we'll keep him comfortable. Since he can't open his mouth, he can't chew and swallow. Obviously, we're not going to continue chemotherapy. since he can't chew or swallow at his age, we don't recommend a feeding tube. I said, well, if you don't recommend a feeding tube, you're saying send my 200-pound father into hospice and starve him to death. How long do you estimate someone starves to death in hospice? They said about 2 weeks. Just because he can't open his mouth, just because he can't speak. I'm not holding on to him going outside and doing backflips or driving a car again. I'm not starving my father to death because you have decided that he's not worth putting the effort into. So they were telling me the way he was looking that he wasn't going to make much progress. I said, I know my father. My father told me he wanted to fight till his last breath. That's just who he is. My father had so much pride, he wasn't going to lay down and die. I came back to the hospital. The doctor said, are you a medical professional? I said, no. He said, in the last 3 days, your father is 70% better. He's listening to commands, squeezing this, moving that, lifting his leg. He's excited to see the nurses. Got quite the sense of humor, even though he can't speak. I said, that's my dude. That's my dad. Way back before Moss and McGee emerged, they at first came to evaluate him and told him that he wasn't a candidate. And they gave it a couple days and they came back and said, wow, your dad is doing amazing. The part of the brain that controls your mouth also controls your breathing. He was on a high-flow breathing machine, regular oxygen. They let me know if the hospital could wean him off oxygen and he could breathe on his own, he was going to go to rehab. My dad had 3 or 4 different types of insurance because he was a veteran. The hospital at the time made a hell of a mistake letting me know that he wasn't qualified for certain things he was qualified for. So they temporarily sent him to a rehab facility, not in his best interest. That facility called me not 4 or 5 days later, letting me know that they had allowed my father to slip down in the bed, aspirate, and have another stroke. By the time I got to the hospital, it wasn't the same. The stroke went right back to the same part of the brain that it had already killed, just in larger area. The reason why he was having these strokes is that intense chemotherapy raises your blood pressure. It has to do with platelets, white blood cells, and your immune system. The first stroke shut off 2 or 3 blood clots into his brain, which blocked his brain. The second stroke sent another 2 or 3 out of his heart. It's just something that happens with chemotherapy. It was very eerie because the doctor told me the only major side effect with chemotherapy of this type is blood clots. That was the first thing he had told me 2 years prior. I can say, although it took a wind out of me, it wasn't unexpected. Him and I fought hard. The cancer didn't kill him, but the chemotherapy did. He had an initial tumor in his adrenal gland, about 3 centimeters large. One in his lungs, about 1 centimeter, then in his lymph nodes along his neck. The cancer left his lymph nodes. The adrenal tumor was the size of a pea. The one in his lung was shrinking. He entered remission at 80 years old. All of our hard work, I'm grateful for. I'm grateful he was able to stick around far past the 6 months. It seemed in vain, though. Like I had been robbed. It was just a feeling like I did this for what? Not that I wanted to walk away, but I fought. I spent time with him. I don't take it back. I didn't keep anybody away. I wanted people around what I had seen. in my family, when everyone else had cancer, all my aunts and uncles died from cancer. During the time he was sick, we went to one last Thanksgiving dinner and that was it. He had one birthday where I tried to have a barbecue and I invited my siblings, I invited family members. Either they didn't reply. I remember my sister saying, "It's too hot." That was the last birthday he had. Each of his hospital stays, my paperwork was in order. No one came to the hospital with me, sat with me, asked me any questions, held my hand, called me and said, "Do you have any food in the fridge? Are you okay? What are you doing? Are you all right? What's on your mind?" Anything that you would think. I called my cousin and said, "Hey, his life is like this. It's like a light bulb. It's flickering. Each time he goes in the hospital, that's a flicker. And they're getting him to turn back on, but one of these days it's going to go out. And we need to start making arrangements. We need to figure out what we're going to do." This was the time I said to her, "Hey, I'll come over the bridge. I'll meet you in New Jersey for coffee so we could figure this out." She told me I wasn't on her level. My siblings and their mother were telling University of Penn that they didn't know me. I walked into the hospital. The floor doctor says, "We have some questions on who you are." They say they don't know you. You're not her brother, etc. I said, "Miss, this is my father. I am his power of attorney. It's always been me and him." She says, "Until we can figure out who you are, you're going to have to leave the hospital." I said, "If you want me to prove who I am, you've got to give me some contact information." She gave me a form and I walked out of the hospital. I cried out of the hospital. I couldn't believe during this major illness, during this time where he's incapacitated, people focused on harming me rather than on him, his health, saying goodbye, spending time. I had to go home, get my parents' custody agreement and a copy of the birth certificate. I get back to the hospital after emailing. No one is around. I get the clerk at the desk to get the doctor. I said, "I need the floor doctor." They said, "What do you mean?" I said, "The last time I was here, you accused me of not being who I say I am and saying that I may be escorted out of the hospital. So I need someone to come and confirm that they received this information." They come and apologize. "We were able to verify your identity with the information you provided. We verified everything with references. I'm not sure why they would have said that they don't know who you are." I said, "Because the bitches are fucking crazy. They're fucking weird. That's why. They're losers. And they're obsessed with me." There was this wonderful lady named Kim at the desk. I went up to Kim. She says, "I already know why you're coming up to me." She said, "All they do when they come in here is talk about you. We keep explaining we don't know you. This is a hospital. We know you're his power of attorney. You have to put a code on the door. These people are never going to stop harassing us about you. They don't come in here talking about him or operating in his best interest. You need to put a code on the door called red coding. You get red coded when you're a shooting victim or at risk of being harmed." She said, "All you have to do is just tell me red code." I said, "Red code." She said, "Done." She writes down this password that seems like a CAPTCHA off of damn Google. It's all these letters and stuff like that, uppercase, lowercase. If I don't give security the code, I can't get in. Or anybody. I reached out to everybody important and said, "Here's the code, A, B, and C." Do you think the code was given to who it was supposed to be given to? Absolutely not. When people got to the hospital, they couldn't get in. I was getting cursed out by decisions that I made to protect myself and my father. No one asked me any questions. No one wanted to know why. I just got cussed out because they couldn't get in the door. It was about their feelings. There was not once that I sat in the hospital with another family member. Not once that anybody said, hey, I want to go see your father, actually went to go see my father, friends included. I was getting faked out by people. Oh, call me if you need anything. Call me if you want me to go up to the hospital. Call me if you want me to come and sit with you. It never happened. Never happened. Thank you for watching. Part 2 is coming next week. We're going to finish up this story.